I'm David Walters, and this is Innovatio. Welcome back, everyone, to Innovatio. The response to the podcast on Spotify and the video cast on YouTube have been fantastic, and thank you for the support. Please continue to like and share the contents from the show. For all of our latest updates, follow us on Twitter at InnovatioAero. Today, I'm excited to be speaking to Elliott Corke, Technical Director of Hexcam, a drone service provider. He also is director of dronetraining.co.uk, a leading drone training provider who also provides training programs across the globe. As a company, Hexcam support innovation in many sectors. They took part in a program of works recently that saw them successfully win an innovation award sponsored by Switch 2. This was then presented to Nottingham City Council and EnviroEnergy for their pioneering use of the technology provided by Hexcam. This was utilised to carry out rapid inspection of heatworks. Elliott, welcome to Innovatio.
Oh, hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. No, thank you for finding the time. I have known you for some time in the industry. You have played a part with RPAS previously, as has Matt, one of our previous guests, who you also know. And we had some interesting discussions actually around the aspects of training. So make sure you catch his interview when that comes out. But for the audience and for those that aren't familiar with you, why don't you give us a bit of background about yourself and dronetraining.co.uk?
Yeah, sure. I came into the drone sector in 2012, having sort of discovered drones in 2011 when I had a conversation with a friend. The first drone I ever saw was on the BBC, and they were actually filming Cyberhawk doing a bridge inspection in Scotland. And at that time, it was so new that it was news that the drones, just that they were using the drones for inspection. And as soon as I saw that, it was just one of those moments where I just knew that's what I wanted to do. So my background's in teaching. So I was a science teacher for 10 years. I'm a marine biologist by training. So when I came into the drone sector, I really started focusing on environmental work, but then it gradually spread out from there. And then as I got more into it, people started asking me to train them. So in sort of 2013, I started giving people basic flight training because there weren't many people actually doing the training at that point. And then the training side really started to expand, and that's my primary focus now.
Ah, fantastic. I never knew you were a qualified marine biologist.
Yeah. I specialise in seaweeds. Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Interesting. In fact,
how do you go from there to drones? I don't know.
Well, you say that. I saw a piece recently, and the name. Oh, there we go. Cane Tech, a company based up in Scotland, in partnership with Connected Places Catapult. The satellite catapult arm, I think it was, were looking at utilising drones for detecting species of algae, I think it was, around coastal environments. I think it's specifically around nuclear installations. There's a press release out there. If you Google it, you'll find it. I don't want to dive into the weeds too much. No pun intended. In case I take it down the wrong avenue, but I'm pretty sure that's what
there was one actually. They were looking at detecting jellyfish blooms. And the jellyfish are getting sucked into the intakes.
Yeah.
So it was to give an early warning on jellyfish blooms going into the intakes of nuclear power stations. I think.
I must admit, I think that's something, one, I never thought about, but two, kind of terrifies me that we're going to end up with these nuclear-fied jellyfish. Sounds like something out of some Japanese sci-fi movie or something. But okay, excellent. No, fantastic. So I guess we all came into this space in various different ways. and you've kind of alluded to that you saw the technology being on the BBC. As a child and you were looking at like career routes, did you ever imagine you'd be ending up in a position where you were kind of leading some of the training and development in an industry like we have now, and also with the innovation work that's being conducted through Hexcam?
Well, no, but ironically, I did want to be a pilot. I can remember my 15th birthday cake, my nan making a little aeroplane, and I had my first flying lesson on my 15th birthday. And that was the only flying lesson I had for like nearly 30 years, which is quite funny. So, and I had the classic Airfix models all over my ceiling. And at one point, I really wanted to be a helicopter pilot, and I honestly don't know when that changed. And so I then diverted off and ended up in biology and then teaching biology and environmental science for those 11 years. But I do think that my background in teaching and general tech has really helped as we've come into this sector. So, getting in fairly early doors into the industry, I really enjoyed building the drones, supplying the drones to people, and it was, yeah, that initial work, I think, that got us there. I suppose a little way ahead of the field, and particularly, I think, as I built the team around us, which we built the Hexcam team and we built the global drone training team, a lot of people, there's a lot of people in there with a lot of really good skills. So that innovation award actually came off the back of us going down to I can't remember, it's some kind of innovation pitch in London, and we went down and pitched the services down there, and Nottingham Council took us up on that thermal imaging one, which proved very, very interesting, really interesting project. So it's always good because there are so many different uses. There's so many different uses of the kit, and when somebody says to me, "Can you do this?" You almost have to go, "Well, yeah, it might take a little bit of thinking about, but I think we can." And generally, as long as we can do it, legally, safely, and ethically, we'll give it a go. What I don't, the one thing I don't like is when people say they can do stuff and they clearly can't. That bugs me. But that's it. It's a minor. I'm sure that happens in all industries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's and I think what that can cause is for a negative impact on the use of technology, such as the unmanned systems that we use. A customer pays a drone operator, an expert in his field, to deliver a service that he says he can deliver. He soon realizes that he cannot, after saying that he can. So the customer is going to have to pay twice because or they pay once and decide never to be exposed to the technology again. And I've been in that situation before where I have been the follow-up guy to someone else not being successful. And I think, in fact, even prudent to that, it was a job for the MOD, and it was the inspection of some aircraft hangars. They had issues with the roofing and that they needed inspecting. Scaffolding was like 35 grand and a 8-week lead time or something. And a guy had gone up with a Phantom, literally only had his PFCO a week, from what I was told. Put his Phantom up in the air, and as soon as the Phantom got above the height of the roof of the aircraft hangar, and it had this weird pitched roofing. It was they were like gullies every 3 meters. It's the old-fashioned style hangars, and the wind just took his Phantom, and I think the Phantom ended up landing in the site officer's front lawn. He had the cottage on this base, so you can imagine the repercussions of that. And it was actually my flight examiner, Steve Holland, called me up and said, "Dave, look, so there's a job that's gone awry. I know the kit that you use, and I know the skills that you have. Can you help someone out?" And I was like, "Yep, okay." And I went and did just that, and we completed it safely and got the job done and delivered the material, the inspection data that was needed. But I think I spent more time reassuring the customer that we could deliver in the time frame and the data that they wanted, I spent more time doing that than I actually did flying and capturing the data. And you kind of you're kind of not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it to prevent a negative impact on the space that you're working in. I guess. So yeah, that was an interesting one for me. And now we're talking about me, and I should be talking about you. So
no, it's fine. we get a lot of that. We get a lot of that. Oh, we tried drones. We tried drones. They don't work. It's like, and no, you tried one person with a drone who maybe couldn't do it properly. We know we can do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's frustrating when we're having to continuously, fight to show that what we can do is valid and gives great results. So.
Yeah, I mean, the right tool for the right job, and the drone is an additional tool in the toolbox. And in some cases, sticking a camera on a pole can be just as good, and if not, some cases safer than deploying a drone. But yeah, okay, no, that's really good. That was really good to understand kind of your journey and how you came into this space. So we both have children. We both have boys, and I think yours are slightly older than mine. So how would you go about inspiring the next generation who are interested in robotics and tech and thinking, wow, drones look cool? What would your piece of advice be to someone that's thinking about coming into this, area?
Well, actually, my son is 17 and he's just applying for aerospace at university. So he's he's got the bug slightly, and he wants to be an engineer. And so if they're interested, if people are interested in the engineering side, then it's genuinely one of those things where there's so much going on in the space, particularly with future flight coming in, things and urban air mobility and all that stuff. So there's a lot going on the engineering side, but I think generally. It's trying to infuse people into the actual to get people to look beyond the drones. The drones are cool and everyone enjoys flying the drones and so on. But the drones, as you said just now, are a means to an end. And so it's trying to infuse people into actually the uses of the drones in terms of either the creative imagery or photogrammetry or, whatever the actual output is, as well as just the actual drone technology itself. So yeah, they've got to get beyond the "this is cool" bit and then find out what they can actually do with the kit, I suppose. But yeah, and as I said, there's so many different applications because at the end of the day, it's just a flying tripod. That's all it is. So anywhere, anything you can put, whatever form of data acquisition you need, whether that's whatever that is. We've seen so many different potential uses. There's something there to excite anybody, I think, and that's what I like. I just love when we're doing the training, the breadth of people we get through the training course. I never know what I'm going to get coming through the door from. Obviously we get the surveyors and the creative people, but we've got people hanging side scan sonar off drones and all kinds of exciting stuff. So there's something there for everybody, I think, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the use cases you come across that you could have never imagined. And I mean, I think I have an innovative and entrepreneurial mind. I try and think of really random and wacky use cases for drones, not just for the sake of using the drone, but actually to see if there's like a real benefit. And I had a guy at an event come up to me. I think it was Andrew Griffiths, actually. He came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I've got this new thing going on." And I was like, "Okay, what's that?" He was like, "Inspecting bolt heads on the side of vessels." I was like, "Vessels?" He said, "Yeah, ships." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I'm flying off the deck and I'm flying down the side of the boat and I'm inspecting every single bolt head that's above the waterline." And I'm like, "Wow, okay, well, that's a great use case." I'm thinking, my God, that must be slightly monotonous. But I guess if you can automate it and essentially do a photogrammetry flight across the side of a vessel, then it could be quite lucrative, I guess. And again, it was a use case I'd never thought of. And I think that was back in 2015. I met Andrew at one of the shows. Andrew, if you're watching, shout out to you. But yeah, no, I think it's great to hear about your son and obviously the aerospace thing. And that's really exciting now that there is, I think, support in education and the focus and realization that aerospace for a career is now more relevant than ever.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't.
And broader, I think, than it's ever been before as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, back when I was in college, 1998, I think. You know, aerospace wasn't really on my radar, and I mean, I'm quite local to Cranfield, and I wasn't really even aware of what Cranfield were doing. And I think if I had realised, I would certainly have moved away from the IT and pursued the career directly into aerospace, because it's an industry that I've become to love and be so passionate about, and it's just cool tech. I mean, even some of the stuff I don't understand, just to see the output of it, it's just like that's amazing. That's cool, you know. But yeah, excellent. So, what would you say then has been the highlight on your journey so far? What's the thing that kind of sticks in your mind?
I think part of it is just the people I've met. I would never have met the breadth of people that I end up, that I've ended up meeting along the way. From all the early RPAS days, but also, the people who we're still in touch with now, and my own team. It's such a great team. So that's been really exciting, because I've never run a business before. So just meeting all those people. My personal highlight, though, I think is the work we started doing in Africa. So I first went to Africa in a drone context in 2013 when I went to film a cycle race in the Congo. And I honestly wish I could go back with some of the kit we have now, because I went over there with my little F550 Hex with a GoPro strapped to it, with very little in the way of downlink at all. We were shooting blind, and then I had another rig and a Versadrone's hexacopter that had a very early brushless gimbal on it. So we took all this kit out to the Congo, with no real backup, and went and filmed this cycle race, the Tour de Congo, and it was really, really good fun. But if I could go back now with just a Mavic, the results would be a lot better. But that really got my heart going for Africa again, because I'd visited when I was at university. And then when we got the opportunity to team up with We Robotics to deliver some training into the flying labs, so we were training teams from Tanzania, Kenya, I think at that point, and Ghana. And it was great. And then when I went over there, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I went into the university over on Zanzibar, and we went into the university building, walked into this room, and there were 10 EVs lined up along the side of the room. And I was thinking, that's 100 grand's worth of kit just sat there. And it's like, what are you doing with these? And it's like, oh, we've already mapped the whole of Zanzibar using EVs in 3 kilometer grids, BVLOS. The whole island's mapped. It's never been mapped before. We've done that. It's an open source mapping project. We're already starting to map Dar es Salaam. There's delivery. And I just, at that point, wasn't aware of the sheer volume of stuff that was going on. But because of the lower levels of general aviation, because they're able to, once you get through the security aspect, which is the big thing, the work they're doing is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, now we have the training base in Tanzania and in Senegal as well. We've run a few courses over there, and it's really to give pilots an equivalent certification. So that we're not, although they're getting UK certification, it's showing a level of skill that the local civil aviation authorities require, and it's starting. A number of them now are actually really liaising well with the local civil aviation authorities. So it's and there's such huge potential because of other areas of infrastructure maybe aren't quite so good. So things like the vaccine deliveries, the medical deliveries that Zipline are doing, that kind of stuff, which over here we think, well, isn't it easier just to get a van along a road to deliver stuff? Whereas over there, there's a genuine need, and there's a huge amount of work going on. So that getting involved in that has been a real eye opener. It's been really, really good fun, and the teams are great.
That sounds great, and yeah, I'd like to hear more on that. If you do have any activities out there, let me know, and we'll see how we can support you on here and share the good work that you're doing over there. And I guess also it's that feeling of doing good, that having that use case where the drones themselves are being used for fantastic use cases,
Yeah.
And supporting that, hashtag drones for good. That helps really improve the perception of the technology that we have access today.
Yeah.
No, it sounds exciting, mate. I look forward to hearing more on that. That
And you talk
sounds.
about being entrepreneurial, but the guys who are leading over there are such amazing entrepreneurs that, they're really digging into every potential use they can find. So I think we'll see Africa being a real hotbed of development as time goes by. And and if in some ways, particularly in terms of legislation, I think that's the main issue is we've got the same tech, but the legislation over here is in some ways is holding that back. We're pushing the whole time against this legislative boundary. And hopefully, this is what I hope Future Flight will do. It'll help to start pushing those boundaries out in a safe and incremental way, hopefully.
That's fantastic, Elliot, and I think that's a good segue actually into Future Flight. It's we're all sitting on tentative hooks this week, awaiting results from some of the applications. I know quite a few organisations that have been involved in bids, including yourself. What are you hoping Future Flight is going to bring and enable to UK companies? What are your thoughts?
My initial thought is I hope that what Future Flight will do is increase public awareness and public perception of the positive uses of drones. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the urban air mobility side, the whole flying taxi idea, which, is beyond my own knowledge base. So it's not something initially that I hope we're getting involved with. So we're still going to be focusing on the smaller drones, the off-the-shelf drones, but actually focusing in on those beyond visual line of sight applications. And what we noticed when we went along to the workshop day back in February when the world was normal, is that there wasn't much talk about training at all. And I think when you're getting into that beyond visual line of sight kind of space, the kind of training requirements have to increase because you haven't got visual line of sight on your drone. You have to know your aircraft really well to know what it's going to do. How are you going to cope if something goes wrong when the drone is way out of sight? So what we're looking at is obviously linking up with various companies that are involved. Obviously, Altitude Angel, Drone Cloud, we're involved. Hexcam are involved in our bid. Our local police are involved because they've got a lot of beyond visual line of sight applications, and we've got a really good relationship with our local air traffic control as well. And I think, and our bid is really to develop the beyond visual line of sight training alongside the enabling technology to enable it to be done safely and see how that builds. So there's nothing horrifically complicated in what we intend to do, but we're waiting for the announcement. We hope we get it. At the end of the day, if we don't get it, then it's likely we'll still proceed some of the things we want to do, but it will just be a slower process. And that injection of expertise and funding would be very, very helpful in moving things forward. But it's a lot of our clients, both in training and the other side of things, really are starting to push that 500-meter limit, and even where those of them that got OSCs to go slightly further, to be able to push things out to a few kilometers would make such a difference in terms of time implications of jobs, staffing implications of jobs, cost.
I think there's absolutely huge benefits. I think in all sectors, and I don't think we are yet to see or realise the benefits that could mean to the UK kind of GDP. Yeah. Because if you look at it for agriculture, for example, a surveyor going out taking soil samples, on a quad bike, he's got to ride around the field for the best part of half a day taking samples, where you could put a drone up in the air. And in some cases, with some of the technology that's coming on board now, it's flying with a multispectral camera, does the flight in 15 minutes, actually lands and gives you the report in a PDF format that you can then upload to your John Deere, which will then go out and then, drop the required fertilizers, etc., in a tractor that's literally driving itself via the information it's been given from the drone, and the driver's just sitting there as a mitigator in case of a system error, let's say, or a failure.
Same as it is with any automated drone flight, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when we start bringing those cost savings and benefits into a sector like the agricultural market, the savings and the benefits are going to have huge potentials. And I don't think we can say that straight off it's gonna be perfect, because it never is with these types of use case. But certainly in the work that I've been involved in, and the work that we're seeing come out of Drone AG with Jack Ragham, and the innovative solutions that he's been working on, and Harper Adams doing the hands-free hectare. And that in itself is a fantastic project. If anyone wants to look up the hands-free hectare, just Google hands-free hectare Harper Adams. They literally have this autonomous farm where tractors are leaving barns without a driver, and gates are opening when they sense a tractor coming, and they're doing crop spraying, and it's just fantastic to see. Scary at the same time, because you're thinking, "Wow, this is the future that my kids will become familiar with." But man, innovation at its best. It's really, really exceptional stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of my closing questions really is what's next for you guys? What are your plans? You mentioned obviously with the future flight applications that there's some initiatives going on there and some work that you're working on. But outside of future flight, what else is bubbling away at drone training?
It's really, I think what we're trying to do is really just continue to provide support for our our trainees and the pilots that go along. So, we've got a lot of people who come to us for initial training and just stick with us for renewals and ongoing support. So, what I'm trying to do more and more is, the knowledge we have amongst our instructors and the close contacts I've got in the industry is really benefiting everybody. So we're trying to begin to build, particularly for our members, a real big sort of repository of knowledge on the different areas. So building on the training. I mean, the good thing about the training now is with the GVC and everything coming in. First up, we have a single name for everything, which is brilliant. Instead of all these different names, we have the A2CFC and the GVC. But what the GVC is going to allow people to do is, if it works properly, as they've said it will, is, you get your base certification and then you build on these new modules like the EV loss module, and there will be other modules coming. So what I hope we'll see over the next few years is a much more sort of stepwise training, I suppose, that allows people to build skills over time and develop into niches and that kind of thing, rather than it just being one bit of training fits everybody, which it really doesn't. And I just like to keep being part of that, I suppose, because it's actually the education side that really interests me, alongside the tech. So what I want to see is, I want to see people doing stuff properly, people excited in the industry and interested, so that when they're out working, that helps everybody, because they're professional, they're safe, people see the drones being used safely, and then they start to look at other applications, as opposed to doing what we said at the beginning of the of the chat, which was shutting it down immediately because it didn't work that one time. So what I'm hoping is, by sending out people who are professional and safe, that we help that industry as a whole, really. And yes, we're increasing competitors. We realize that. And we're increasing our own competitors. We realize that as well. But, there's enough space, I think, at the moment, as the industry develops.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one of the questions that got, or one of the discussion points that came up on a interview that I was doing the other day was about just culture and the mindset of operators, and in some way kind of how the pilot in command, which sounds kind of authoritative, and you think you are kind of empowered as an operator, is now referred to as remote pilot. Kind of sounds a little bit watered down from that aspects, but kind of putting that aside, have you seen a change in the mindset around just culture? Because we know that is an area where our industry is weakest, because people don't like to talk about their failures,
No.
and in doing so, not sharing those failures, then has an inability to be able to share findings from those failures with other operators, whether it's a failure on a hardware, whether it's a ConOps issue. How have you perceived, or what have you seen over the last few years with the training?
I think it is maturing, and there's been a real push from the CAA for us to encourage people to, report incidents. And I think, the recent thing we had, I can't remember, it was about 18 months ago now, with the M200s, when a few of those dropped out of the sky, they were reported. That led to a grounding of the M200s, that led to DJI pushing through the firmware fix quickly. And I think that showed it does kind of work. And we try and explain to people, it's like, yeah, something might have happened to your drone, and you think, oh, I don't know what happened there. But if you report that, and then the CAA that same week get another 5 reports of the same thing happening, it enables them to do something. Whereas if people don't report it, you just don't, you don't get that, that kind of closed loop of something happening and something be done about it, and then that information going out. So I think there is more awareness now, and people are happier to talk. I do think where people get frustrated is where things happen that are clearly dangerous, or a pilot is doing something that is dangerous, and it's out there and everyone's seen it, and then we see nothing happen. That frustrates us, because we're trying to do it properly. We've tried to do it properly for 8-9 years, and when you see somebody, something that is clearly illegal, and then nothing is done about it, it makes you think, well, why bother? So there's that to deal with. The just culture needs to be there, because that's important. That spirit of openness is critical to the future development. But at the same time, when things do go wrong, it does need to be followed up. And when it is clearly a dangerous behaviour or something like that, the industry needs to see that followed up, or else people think, why bother? I'll just get on with it. That they're doing it. Why don't I just get on with it as well?
Yeah, yeah, and I think just to touch on that, the fear of reprisal, that you're going to get slapped with a stick, or receive a punishment because you haven't, or because you have reported a failure. You've tried to be open and transparent, but there's a fear of repercussion, whether you lose your PFCO, and it might be something that completely out of your control. It could, like you said, it could be a system failure or a software failure down to firmware issues. And this is where I should really plug Altitude Angel's Just Culture web form submission, where you can push any incidents you have with your aircraft, even if you're not fully aware of what the failure point was. They have an anonymous Just Culture data form on their website, and it allows them to see that if all of a sudden, they get 5 or 10 reports of certain systems having a failure, they can at least kind of flag it to the regulator and the manufacturer and say, hey, we're seeing a trend here. Is there something that you need to be looking into? Or, as we saw with the M200s, stopping flights under OSC conditions. And I think as an industry, that's the area that we need to improve on, is the just culture and the transparency.
And I think that, I've always said to people that the CIA accept that accidents happen. What they want to see is that the pilots have done their due diligence in their preparations, making the operation as safe as possible in the first place. But, accidents happen in every industry, unfortunately. And, they're not gonna slam down on people who've actually prepared as best they can, and something out of their control has happened. It's just not gonna happen. There'll be an investigation, and people will learn from it, and that's really important.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, Elliott, it's been great to talk to you and also to catch up. Now, if people want to get in touch with you regarding training or innovation projects, what's the best way they can get hold of you?
The easiest way to get us is just dronetraining.co.uk. Very simple website. So, that's the best way.
Well, Elliott, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you for joining us. I hope our listeners have enjoyed the conversations that we've had today. Thank you for the subscribers for liking and sharing the content. You can now find us on Spotify and on Apple with their podcast service, and also obviously on YouTube. Please continue to like and share the content. You can find us at Innovatio Aero on Twitter for your latest updates. From me, your host, David, thank you. See you on the next one.